And there are various committees wrapping up throughout the building and across the street, so hopefully we'll have them here shortly and be able to get started. Great. So we're going to, just a little housekeeping to fill the time. We're going to hear Senate Bill 55, and then we're going to have a hearing only on Senate Bill 121. There are sign-up sheets on the table out front. If anybody wants to speak to either of those or both of those bills, you need to sign up, please. All right, we do have a quorum, and so I will call the meeting of the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee to order, and I'll ask Vice Chairman Harbin to please open us with a word of prayer.
Let's just pray, please. Lord, we thank you for the day that you've given us, for life itself, and for the blessings that we have. Thank you for the honor and privilege, dear Lord, to represent the citizens of Georgia. We ask your blessings upon our nation and upon our state. Would you give us wisdom, dear Lord, as we hear the matters that are here before us, and ask that you would give us your divine wisdom and knowledge and discretion as we deal with those. And we'll thank you in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you. First bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 55, Chairman Billy Hickman, Dignity and Pay Act. If you would come forward and tell us about your bill. You think if I turned it on, that might help?
I think the microphone is a little more on top of us over here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for committee for allowing us to be here today. We're talking about Senate Bill 55, LC 550416. And I also have with me today Charlotte Dinsmore, who is the Executive Director of Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. I think all y'all remember last year we had a very successful bill called the GAIN Bill, Georgia as a Model Employer for People with Disabilities. And I know all the Senate members have met Martha, who works in our little, supply or our little goodie room. Lack of a better word. Yeah, there you go. And you know how happy she is every day when we walk in there, because she's so happy to be employed and feel useful, and that's very, very important. So we talked last year about there's about 150,000 people in people in Georgia that have mental or physical disabilities, and only about 25,000 of them that have some form of employment. So not only is this a way to bring these people back into employment, but it's also a workforce development issue too, because we've heard how many jobs we have unfilled in Georgia. This bill is not about stopping certain employers from paying people with physical mental disabilities less than federal minimum wage. This bill is about stopping certain employers from paying people with physical and mental disability less than federal minimum wage. Background on this bill: last year, Representative Sharon Cooper sponsored a bill with the same language, House Bill 1125. And as we all know, sometimes we just run out of time, and that's what happened on this bill. It passed the House Industry and Labor Committee, the House floor, and the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee unanimously before running out of time in the Senate rules. There's a provision in the Fair Labor Standard Act, Section 14C, which was set up in 1938. And if, with a little bit of math, you'll realize that 1938 was 93 years ago. And the main purpose of that bill was to help veterans with disabilities have some type of employment. And so the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act, Section 14C, authorized sub-minimum wages based on perceived productivity differences for workers with disabilities. So Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act allows community rehabilitation programs, commonly referred to as CRP, to pay workers with disabilities less than federal minimum wage, while initially creating a foster employment opportunities. This provision traps individuals with disabilities to outdated systems that limit their potential and segregate them from competitive workplaces. In Georgia, Mr. Chairman, we have 8 of the community rehabilitation programs, and that used 14C certificates to pay roughly 250 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities wages as low as less than $1 an hour. Contrary to concerns, ending 14C will not harm businesses such as we see a lot of coffee shops and grocery stores and local restaurants that already pay workers with disabilities at or above minimum wage. By phasing out 14C certificates, Georgia can align with modern employment practices, promote economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities, and strengthen its workforce. Our state, as we well know and we say all the time, has one of the strongest economies in the country. Ensuring that all working Georgians receive at least minimum wage is just common sense and respect. Georgia would join 13 other states that have already phased out 14C certificates, recognizing that people with disabilities deserve a fair wage. What this bill does, this bill allows community rehab programs they'll have 2 years to gradually increase from what they're paying now to the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. So it's not immediate. This bill does not shut down shelter workshops or eliminate CRPs as a deployment option. It simply ensures that employees who work there are paid fairly. There is ample federal funding and resources to help CRPs transition from 14C without harming the services they provide. Ending 14Cs will not affect individuals' access to Social Security. It will not affect the access to Medicaid or Medicare. Research shows that eliminating sub-minimum wages leads to more integrated and meaningful employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. That was Senator Burns called me. Individuals with disabilities. As we have seen here in the Senate with Martha, this bill is about dignity and fairness, ensuring that people with disabilities are paid at least what we consider the bare minimum wage for all other workers. I urge that this committee to support the Dignity and Pay Act to help make Georgia a leader in fair employment of all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yes, sir. Senator Hodges, 2.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Hickman, I get what you're trying to do, and I agree with you very much.
Thank you.
My question is, though, do you think this might make some jobs go away? That some people with disabilities are employed right now, and they might not have that employment opportunity?
I'm going to ask
Yeah,
Charlotte to address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that question. It's absolutely a concern of ours when we were looking at this legislation. But the situation here in Georgia is such that the 8 organizations that still do this, which if I can draw your attention to this sheet that I handed out to y'all before that lists all 8 organizations still using this in Georgia, they only use 250 of these certificates. That means only 250 individuals in Georgia are even eligible to be paid less than minimum wage. And what you can see with the asterisks along the side is that 6 out of these 8 are already taking steps to move away from this and maintain jobs for those individuals. What we've seen in the rest of the country is that people with disabilities, when they are no longer making some minimum wage, are actually encouraged to get jobs in the community, which under federal law is the preferred outcome for people with disabilities, that they are in integrated settings. If you flip to the side that has some highlighting on it, you'll see on the back the difference between organizations in the state that use some minimum wages and organizations that no longer use them. There used to be, even in this century, there were almost 30 places still using some minimum wage certificates, but that has now dwindled down to the 8 remaining. We actually have some guests here today that I think will be opposing this bill, but you can see that we've highlighted at the top, they're the top provider of 14C certificates. And I think you will also notice on the far right column that the only difference between this organization and the others on the list, other than the fact that they don't use 14C certificates, is that the executive director makes over $100,000 more than these other organizations. These are all public records available through tax returns. So I just wanted to raise that point for y'all.
So you don't think that you would do anybody any harm?
No, sir, we've seen
Okay.
success in
Okay.
finding people actually jobs in the community.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. That was a long-winded answer. I apologize.
Thank you.
Senator Kirkpatrick, or is that Senator Robertson?
Chairman Hickman, we're early into this legislative session, but I got to tell you, I don't think I've seen a better piece of legislation yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The one that requires us to do the job that we're supposed to do when we're here, and that's taking care of good Georgia citizens. My question is do these two questions? Do these individuals currently qualify for unemployment, or would they qualify if we
Very good question.
take this up?
That is a very good question that I know many of them are receiving Social Security benefits through Medicaid, and this would not impact that for them because of the ABLE legislation that we passed years ago here in Georgia that allows them to save more money. But most of these people are receiving services through these programs, which is why this bill is not designed to shut them down, and it's only designed to support them in finding other jobs.
In the companies you show here.
Yes, sir.
And I know a couple of them, but what's the primary product that they put out?
Depends on the contract that they get at the time. When Charlie Miller and I visited an organization over the summer, the folks that are actually here today, they were making allergy kits for dog testing. Testing if you had a dog allergy was what they were working on.
So assembly type work?
Assembly type work, yes, sir. And there are many workshops in the state that still do this sort of work, but pay the folks minimum wage for their
and
labor.
the individuals you and Charlie visited, what were their what was their wage, the primary wage?
I was not told what
Average?
their wage is, but what I was told is that some of them even make more than minimum wage because they're so efficient with their work. So in that case, this legislation would not impact the income for the
So
organization at
they're
all.
paid by the piece.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, my wife Joanne ran a workshop in Statesboro for an organization, and this back a bunch of years ago, so which would date myself if I said that. But at that point in time, we had a lot of traffic on Highway 301 through our community, and of course, the Yankees were very excited about cotton, and so these individuals took cotton and put in little plastic bags and stapled them together and put some little bit of information on it. So that was sort of like what she's talking
And
Now,
that
you said Yankees, you mean the baseball team?
And if I may add, the organization that Senator Hickman's wife worked for is Pineland. They're on the list of folks that are still using 14C certificates, and they actually attended our advocacy day to support this bill this year. They are very highly in support of this piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman,
Yes. Curious, do these people have to pay state income tax from that standpoint for the wages that they are receiving?
I don't believe so. but
They
I'm not sure.
they would be, not that they would be exempt from state income tax, but because of the personal exemption and standard deduction, all that, it would wipe
That
that
should
out.
take care of it as far as that. I was going to say, if that were not true, that would be another thing that we could do to
Right.
That's
make
right.
this
That's a
even
great
more
point.
beneficial. Okay, thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
I think that like Martha, I think she only works like 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week or something like that, and for us, so it's not like they're 40 hours a week jobs.
And she makes
Yeah.
more than minimum wage, I
Yeah.
believe, working for y'all.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't see any more questions from the committee, but we do have a few people to speak in
Thank you.
support of the bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And as the chairman said, we passed this out of committee, identical bill last year, except the dates have changed, that Chairman Cooper brought us. So I think you'll find strong support. But I do want to give you a chance to voice your support, but I will ask you to keep it pretty brief. It's been a long day. So first, Leah Seller, or is it Saller? Oh yeah, you testified last year. Good to see you again.
Oh, yeah. That's listen.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Leah Solar. I work with Charlie and Charlotte with Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, but last year I had the opportunity to help push this bill forward with Chair Cooper as her intern on the House side. But I actually knew about this bill before that. I work as a manager as well. And sorry, we had an employee there who worked over 10 years. I want to say she worked there for 14 years. She and I bonded because she was disabled as well. She and I actually have the same disability. Hers is just more extreme. And she talked about how before she worked at the theater, she worked at Goodwill. And they paid her less than $3 an hour folding shirts. And they would time her to see just how many shirts she could fold in a certain amount of time and then pay her based on that. And after she worked at Goodwill, she moved to the theater that I work at, and she was making $14 an hour. She was working 20 plus hours a week. She never called in sick. There were people who came in when she was working so that they could talk to her. She was brought Christmas presents, and was just one of the staples of the theater. But as I was talking to her, I realized that the way that they were timing her to see just how many shirts she could fold in a certain amount of time, I realized that I would be less likely to, I wouldn't be able to fold as many shirts as an able-bodied person next to me. And so by those standards, I would also be required to get paid less than minimum wage if I was going by that standard. This 14C certificate program was created 93 years ago in order to make it so that disabled veterans could get paid, could get hired by people who didn't want to hire disabled veterans because they didn't want to hire disabled people otherwise. Throughout the years, this program has been phased out to exclude blind people, to exclude deaf people, to exclude people with physical disabilities that otherwise can work with reasonable accommodations. And this is just the last vestige of this program that needs to get phased out, because people with intellectual disabilities can and do. They are great members of society and are worth the pay. Thanks.
Great job. Thank you, Leah. I appreciate your persistence and bringing this forward. All right. Now we have, let's see, so this is Lee McIntosh from Creative Enterprises.
Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Lee McIntosh. Last night I was informed that my mother passed away. I got up. I knew that today I needed to go plan a funeral. I went to do that, and then I found out that this is the day that this bill is being in the committee, and I needed to come talk. I feel a little bit like David going up against Goliath here. I work at Creative Enterprises. I've been there almost 44 years. So I've dedicated my life to working with this population. I'm here because the people that we serve are not like these qualified, capable people here. Many of them can't talk. None of them drive. None of them have gone to college. None of them are married. None of them have children. All of them live either with their parents or they live in group homes. They're not going to work. That is not the plan. And it's for whatever reason that they have decided on. It's a variety of reasons. Some for safety concerns. Some, their families, their doctors, their caregivers, their support coordinators come together once a year. They do an individual service plan, and they try to decide what's best for each person. Our client also has input into those meetings each year. Many of them do not want to go to work in the community. Some of them because they don't feel safe. Some of them, they can't be left unattended, so sometimes it's hard to go work in a job where you have to be independent when they're not. I know that this legislation, everyone has good intentions. I want everyone to go to work if they want to go to work. I just really believe people should have choices, and they should be able to decide with all their caregivers what's best for them. And I feel like we keep moving to where we want to legislate everyone down the same path. And when you look at people and all the differences in them, it's unfair to them. We've got people, I've put some examples on here, that they would lose their job in the community because they wouldn't be able to meet the production deadlines that many employers have. And so then they would be out completely. They wouldn't have anything to go to if they did not have this 14C certificate. We have a community rehabilitation program that I think they were referring to earlier. They were probably referring to my salary. You know, when you work 44 years somewhere, your salary just goes up over time. But we do have one of the better programs in the whole state working with this population. We've had other counties come to us and ask us to open programs in their county. We are getting ready to open a program in the 5th county in Georgia because they do not have services for the population. Also, people with I got cut off, I think. People with disabilities. Hello? People with I don't know why it keeps cutting out. Okay. Some of them, as they get older, going to work is not what they're wanting. You know, they get to a point where they start to want to slow down. And there aren't really good options for people with disabilities as adults as they age. You know, senior services do not really want to take them. Nursing homes don't want to take them. So we keep them in our program. They'll be in our program from maybe when they age out of the school system. They could be in there into their 70s. I think we may have some people there in their 70s. They're not interested in going to work. I just feel like we need to give people options. We're not saying people shouldn't go to work. We want everyone to go to work. I made my first job placement with someone 45 years ago in the community, and that person retired from that job. And I hope that many, many, many more people will do that. If they want to work, I think the ADA took care of that long ago where they could go to work. Our population have just said, we don't want to go to work for whatever reason. Some of them have health issues. Some of them feel like with their health issues that they could be in a situation where they could, like one person had a seizure in front of the dumpster and no one found him. He was on a job. He needed to go to the hospital. His family felt like it was safer for him to be in our program where he was monitored. We have staff who have been trained and educated in this field. Not all employers know how to deal with all the different disabilities. My mouth is getting really dry.
Ms. McIntosh.
Yes.
I'm going to let you wrap up, if you would, and we're going to go to the next one. So
Okay.
give you another minute.
All I ask is that we not think that everyone can do the same thing, and that we let there be options for people. And if we take this option away, it won't close our program down, but it will take something away from them that's important to them. Thank you.
I appreciate your bringing your perspective to the issue, and my condolences on your loss. It's a mighty tough day. Thank you. Ted Ward, do you want to? And Ted, I should have probably set some parameters. I'm not picking on you, but I'll give you a couple minutes. And
First off, good afternoon, everybody.
thank you.
And I want to say, as a lifelong Georgian and as a brother of a 33-year-old sister with Down syndrome, I really appreciate everybody's attention to this issue. And I appreciate the sentiment of the young lady shared earlier. I want you to know I'm here today to speak on behalf of my sister because she's not able to get up here and tell you what I'm about to tell you. So I come before you today to advocate for provisions in SB 55 to protect the training and employment programs utilized by my sister and other similarly situated adults with disabilities that would be eliminated if this bill is enacted in its current form. Growing up alongside my sister through the implementation of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 1990, I have seen remarkable growth and differentiation in the educational curriculum designed to meet her developmentally appropriate needs. Rather than simply being excluded from other students in special classes, she was placed in a mild moderate classroom for students with disabilities in an appropriate learning level, and provided opportunities to engage with her non-disabled peers through the Best Club and Coffee Shop program at Brookwood High School. Aging out of public school at 22, she was fortunate to enroll in Creative Enterprises in Gwinnett, which assist individuals with disabilities and other barriers to employment in maximizing their potential. At Creative Enterprises, she's able to continue to grow her reading, writing, and math skills through their academic offerings, while also engaging in the arts, life skill development, horticulture activities, and community learning experiences. However, the most impactful part of this program is her work in the production facility, where she works alongside other adults with disabilities to accomplish developmentally appropriate tasks that produce resources and products for local businesses. While she does not receive minimum wage for this work, there is not a better moment in her week than when she receives a paycheck for this work. As a 33-year-old woman, some may find it preposterous that she does not receive full minimum wage, but that overlooks the fact that she possesses the intellectual capacity of a 6 to 7-year-old. This sort of differentiated program, similar to schools, to differentiate special education curriculum, is vital to her capacity building and that of other developmentally disabled adults. I don't stand here with the intention to vote against this bill or to ask you to do the same, but instead I implore each of you on this committee to develop language in this bill that protects programs like the production facility at Creative Enterprises and embrace the concept that schools across Georgia long have. Special needs adults are not a monolith, but a rich tapestry of differently abled individuals, and that all such legislation concerning them should factor in a broad range of Georgians falling in this constituency. Passing this bill in its current form would address the issue of wage equality. I want to point that out. The word fairness was brought up. This does not address fairness. This makes things equal. However, it would shut off this vital resource, and it would undermine fairness, which is meeting the needs of an individual where they're at. Let's not get that confused. Thank you.
Okay, we have Lisa Newbern with GCDD.
Hi, everybody. I want to start by showing you
And Lisa, again, I'll just...
a picture of
Yeah.
Griffin. A couple of minutes and
Okay,
I'll be
thank you.
done. This is Griffin, my 17-year-old son who has Down syndrome. What I want to talk to you about today is making good choices. And I feel like with having 14C in place, we are not making good choices. The past two speakers, I think, have spoken broadly and taken it beyond what this bill is intended to do. We are looking to pay people who have special needs minimum wage, and they deserve that. Anything less is disrespectful of them and their lives. So I am here speaking on behalf of my son, who worked at the pool this summer. Also, I should say I'm the chair of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. So my son worked at the pool snack bar this summer, and he was paid a fair wage, just like everybody else was paid. Could he exchange money with people as quickly as his typically developing peers did? No. But did anybody care? No. We are not looking to take anything away. We are looking to pay people minimum wage or better, regardless of whether they have an intellectual or developmental disability or not. My question to the people sitting behind me is, if you're paying less for the work, are you charging less to your customers for the work that they've done? Or are you making more of a profit off of our children? That disgusts me. We are not looking to take away day programs. We are not looking to take away their jobs. We are looking to pay them fairly. That's what this bill is about, and there is no reason not to do that. I am very sorry for the people that are in this program and the lives that they have led if they have not had the appropriate supports that they needed to get them to a place where they can have jobs that pay them fairly. It doesn't matter if you can talk. You can still do a job if you're supported and we figure out what the right job for you is. Doesn't mean that you should be paid less. If you're in a wheelchair, doesn't mean that you should be paid less. We have a minimum wage. There is no reason to continue with 14C to pay people less than what it is that they deserve for the work that they're doing and that employers are making money off of when they sell whatever it is to who their customers are. There are only a few 14C certificates left in Georgia because most employers have wised up and realized this is no longer appropriate to take advantage of people who have special needs. GCDD works very hard to help people find appropriate employment, to work with employers to say this is what people can do. We can advocate in other ways to make sure that people are appropriately trained. Certainly something I'm advocating for in school right now with my son, who is about to go into GVRA training. There are lots of supports in the community in any area of the state, and that's what we need to be looking for. We need to hold people accountable in that way, not to give them an out to say, yes, pay somebody 22 cents an hour.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Right.
Again, good decisions. Let's make good decisions for this, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have Charlie Miller. Again, Charlie, couple minutes, okay?
Yes, sir. I can't bend forward, so I apologize. But I'll say I'll be a lot quicker speaking than my dad usually is. So I won't keep y'all here all day. Come to the comedy club later tonight, and I'll be doing stand-up. Thank y'all so much for having a good conversation about this bill. Like the many speakers before me have said, we had this bill before, passed out of this committee unanimously before as well. I wanted to speak about a couple things, and I'll keep it brief for you. Sorry, I wanted to calm my body down. I didn't want to start stuttering. I wanted to speak about, I am a big fan of Brian Kemp. I'm a big fan of Governor Deal. One of the great things that I have really worked on is making sure everything that I have ever worked on in the disability community is as bipartisan as possible. I have always wanted to make sure everyone is at the table and we're all speaking with one voice on the disability bills. The reason I bring up the past governor and the current governor, there is currently a federal grant that Georgia has called the SWITC. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but the SWITC grant that the Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, GVRA, and us at the Georgia Council all applied for. We have that grant, and that grant helps these organizations transform into competitive employment for people with disabilities. This is something that we have all worked together on, and something that we all fought together on to make sure that everyone's at the table, but also we all work together on this issue. One other thing that I want to make sure is clear, we actually went to go visit a lot of these programs last year. During the summertime, to really just say, hey, we want to see what your concerns are and see how we can either come to the agreement of some type of middle ground or address some concerns. A lot of the concerns that we had was parents. It was mostly parents that came to these. It was parents not understanding there are supports that the state provides to help people with disabilities. One, not lose their benefits, because that's one big thing that we really want to say. But also, one thing that the state really does well is help them figure out if they're getting a paycheck at minimum wage or a little bit better, how do we make sure the benefits are at the right place as well? So not double dipping, but making sure if a person with a disability is getting paid at or above minimum wage and they're making good money, well, that means that we can start working on lowering their benefits because they're making more money like we all want to do in the state of Georgia. One other thing that I want to say, and this bill is a good bill. I really believe that this is such a good opportunity for Georgia to be a leader in the state, in the country, I mean, to make sure people with disabilities are paid at a fair wage. And the last thing I want to say, the federal government through CMS really kind of monitors these things, and one of the programs actually got the ones that pay people with disabilities below minimum wage, they got dinged by CMS because they don't allow the people with disabilities to go to the vending machines when they're on breaks and stuff of that nature. That is just like, what the heck, man? But I want to say, and I don't want to take up more time, I just want to say thank y'all for having a very honest and open conversation about this. And if there's any questions, we at the Georgia Council, there's a program at UGA called Advancing Employment that helps with this type of stuff as well. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
I hope that was short enough.
That was great.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Chairman Hickman, do you want to close out real quick? And
Yes. I wanted,
real quick.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Eccles, Drew Eccles, could not be here because I think he was so abused today in the Senate, but he did send me this and asked me to read it. He said, not only are we raising a son, and we all know that he's a farmer with tailor-made clothes, not only are we raising a son with intellectual disabilities, my business employs people with disabilities and pays them a fair wage. These people are capable of contributing. They desire to be valued as members of a team. In our experience, the more we expect of them, the more opportunity they have to prove to themselves and to us that they can achieve the goal. Signed, Senator Eccles from the 49th. No, sir, that's all. We would just wish that the committee would vote this fair yes approval, and let's move to the next level.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. I think I've got a.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm honored to make a motion to pass.
I got a do pass. Senator Robertson, a second. Senator Merritt. Any further discussion or amendments? Seeing none, what's the will of the committee? Please signify by your do pass motion by raising your hand. Opposed, like sign. All right, it passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank
Yes.
you for everybody that attended and gave testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, do you want to? Okay. All right, next we're going to have a hearing on Senate Bill 121, excuse me. This is a hearing only. Senate Bill 121. Senator Marty Harbin. All right,
All right.
floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And let me start with this, just kind of what motivates me on this bill. There was a father with 5 children who was coming back from a playground, and he was headed home. In front of him was a driver who had run several cars completely off the road. With that, he got on his cell phone. He called the police department, and he was on the phone with them as he was following the car, and he'd given them the tag as they were following him, and he continued to weave in and out. As he came to the top of a hill, there was a truck in front of him, and the driver who had been swerving decided he was going to pass the truck on the hill. As he passed the truck on the hill, there was a car coming directly at him, and who left the road, came back on the road, and hit the driver and his 5 children head on. The car that he hit had a lady with a child in there, newborn. And they walked away, but with injuries. This driver who left the scene of the accident, and the only reason that they knew who it was because the tag had been picked up. And they followed him, and they arrested him as he came out of the grocery store buying a case of beer. He had had 2 DUIs, driving with a suspended license as well at the same time. That person that was driving the car with 5 kids was myself. And I found a man who had had 2 DUIs, driving with a suspended license. My truck was totaled. The other car was totaled. All 5 of my children were taken to the hospital along with myself. And I sat in a courtroom, and he had minimum limits. And for you who don't understand the insurance, it's $25,000 for bodily injury for all of them, for any limitable person, $50,000 for any one accident, and $25,000 for property damage. That would cover neither one of the cars and did not cover the medical expenses of either party of what went on. What this bill does, and we have a committee substitute, the first one that was there was filed under the wrong section, but what this bill does, it takes a driver who is charged with reckless driving, if you look at lines 13 and 14, and also our alleged counsel has given us, there's a little correction that needs to be made on line 13, which he said he will do with our next substitute. But if someone is charged and found convicted of reckless driving or driving under the influence, what this bill would do, it would increase the limits of liability that that individual is required to carry for 4 years. It would require them to carry a limit of $100,000 per person for bodily injury and $300,000 for a total accident if they were involved, and $100,000 for property damage. If you look at our minimum limits currently in the state of Georgia, they have not been raised for 15 years. And most of us have cars that are worth over $25,000. But the issue, I think, is as much as anything, is that it is the damage that's done to the human bodies and people who have to go to the hospital, who have to deal with medical bills, who have to deal with all the other things that are there. My proposal also would require these limits to be maintained for 4 years by the driver who's been convicted. One of the things I'm being told is that when there's a DUI charged, many times that charge is reduced. And Senator Robinson can confirm this, but it's reduced to reckless driving. And so one of the reasons for including reckless driving in here, it seems like that there is a movement to reduce the charge of DUI, which has a stigmatism with it, if you will, to reckless driving. It would require that person to carry that limit for 4 years, and also to carry evidence in their car as well. I say that to you is that I can't tell you, walking through the process, when I found a man who had been charged not once but twice and was coming out of the store with a case of beer, driving with a suspended license, I just said something should be done to let someone who is charged with DUI know how serious that charge is. And so that's my reason for going forth with this. I bring it for other people because I am in the insurance business, and I have seen more clients of the last few years, because our limits at 25, 50, 25 do not cover the damages that are being done by drivers. And that's the reason. And I would be open to your comments or questions if you have any.
Questions? Chairman Cowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On lines 27, 28, and 29, they're on page 2.
Yes, sir.
So am I reading this to be that you have to have 100, 300, 100 on top of the 25, 50, 25 already required?
No, should be just the 100, 300, 100. And I may have ledge counsel as we've looked through this.
It just says shall be in addition to, which
Okay.
made me wonder, are you really wanting 125?
No.
350
Right,
and
you're correct.
125? And
Good.
I'll defer to legislative counsel on the interpretation of that.
Okay. And then line 24, there's a correction that he's given me as well that was there. But my purpose was to have the 100, 300, 100 in place for 4 years after being charged and convicted of DUI or reckless driving.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What, and it's probably already there, but just wanted to clarify, what's the enforcement mechanism for ensuring compliance?
Well, what they'll do, they have to file the first, when it's first done, an SR 22 is what the insurance department tells me, and that would have to be renewed each year. In the bill, it also, if you look at line 35 and 36, shall keep proof or evidence of such coverage during the operation of the motor vehicle. They would have to have a copy of their coverage in their possession of the car would be the other part. And that's on page 2, lines 35 and 36.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, in lines 13, 14, and 15, you say no individual has been convicted of reckless driving in violation of code section blah, blah, blah. What about somebody who's violated or who has been DUI in another state?
Should come up on the motor vehicle reports. Most of the time, we are transferring information, and I may ask Senator Cowser, Chairman Cowser, because I know you deal in that arena. But as a general rule, in our insurance business, that when we run a motor vehicle report, it reports other states as well from that standpoint.
Should it say that?
Yeah, we're going to refer to our esteemed counsel.
I'm sure our whip knows this as well, but we have the GCIC, Georgia Crime Information Computer Program. All southeastern states have reciprocal reporting.
Right.
So that's your rap sheet, your driver's record, and it would show out-of-state DUIs. But this, to be more precise, you might want to say the Georgia code sections or the comparable from another state.
That's my question.
Yeah, that's what.
If
You're right.
If I
Okay.
might, I'll get with you and legal counsel, but I know this is an area that you have expertise in from that standpoint.
All right.
What's that? No, you have experience with drivers that do such things.
Senator Robertson.
Yeah, just another reason Senator Calvert's my hero is he uses the word rap sheet. But also, I want to be clear, reckless driving is not always a reduction. It is a negotiation through the Solicitor General's office where they reach an agreement, and in many times the fines and punishments in reckless driving are actually greater than the fines in DUIs and things of that nature, just for a point of clarification. Again, so just point of clarification.
And I think a clarification to the committee is this, is those fines do not go to the parties that are injured, they go to the court system. And so that's another issue I don't think a lot of people think about. They think it's going to the injured parties, and it does not.
Senator Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, so I guess I should probably know the answer to this, but people that drive with a suspended license or aren't following the law, you can't always legislate what happens there, but if they have a suspended license, then does that impact on their insurance coverage in any way? Does it invalidate their insurance coverage in any way?
It did not invalidate it in the case that we were dealing with. State Farm, in this case, was very glad to settle for policy limits, and they wanted to walk away from it as soon as they could write a check on it as far as that, because there was damages on both sides that exceeded the limits of liability that the person was carrying.
But would it ever invalidate?
It depends upon the
limit?
policy language. There are some policies that say that you must have a licensed driver, and so it depends upon the verbiage of the actual contract itself.
Thank you.
Senator Harbin, wouldn't it also potentially prompt a cancellation of their coverage if the carrier found out they don't have a valid license?
It would happen very fast.
Okay.
Once they know that, they will do that. But I think the thing that I learned through the process is that they told me I did not have to leave the premises. Or excuse me, I was at the court hearing, and there was a plea of guilty, an agreement of $5,000 and 2 years in prison. Or, 2 months in prison, and that was it. And they told me I could leave. Under Georgia code at that time, the judge had the authority to give 3 years in prison and 2 years to serve mandatory, and which he chose to do from that standpoint, which is a pretty strong. But when you're driving with 2 DUIs, driving with a suspended license, there needs to be a message sent, and he did a great job of sending that message.
Chairman Harbin, your bill though is, that's pretty egregious, but this would be one. All this would...
This would be 1 DUI or reckless driving
Okay,
charge.
thank you. All right, I think that's all the questions. We do have some people signed up to speak to the bill, and I will call on Mr. Bobby Potter he's here representing State Farm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have identified that correctly. So Bobby Potter on behalf of State Farm. There is the substitute. The folks in this insurance world that are behind me have discussed this over the last several days. I've talked with Senator Harbin, which resulted in the change. We noted the increase that Senator Cowsert had noted earlier as well. But I would tell you all this. I'm not here to speak for or against this, but to raise some concerns about implementation of this. Most of this world is covered, and that form name came up, most of this world is covered by the Department of Driver Services. When this occurs, oftentimes there's a suspension of the license. Then there's the SR-22 form that needs to be filed for somebody to have their license reinstated, and the insurance that goes along with that. There's a DS-266 form, if there is the owner, to file that to allow the operator, if that person is different than the owner, to drive that vehicle, or the DS-266 if the employer is to allow an employee to continue to operate a vehicle. In this day of all of the package delivery, it may occur from that perspective to have somebody retain a job. So a lot of that is covered in that way. Under those forms, it requires continued insurance, and it requires insurance for 3 years for those respective forms at the minimum limits. That's what's in place right now, authorized by 40-5-4, but a bunch of regs under DDS at 375 and some change. That's covered there. Some other states do it slightly differently, but I want to raise that to let you all know that's in that arena. And then secondly, just the concern that we've discussed is, and Senator Kirkpatrick may have hit on that what may very well happen is the unintended consequences of 100, 300, 100, very high limits for someone who already has shown they don't operate a vehicle very well. If they've got a DUI or a reckless driving, it may be very much unaffordable. I'm not sure who would place it. As one of you all had indicated, Chairman Harmon, that the first thing an insurer might do once they hear that is to cancel insurance. So the person that has it, whether it's a child of someone, and the only one that's going to go to bat for this person really is the defense lawyer hired in the first place, or a parent, because it may be the parent of a college or high school child. Anybody else would be looking at that person kind of sideways, as we have all seen folks driving recklessly on the road, whether it's affiliated with DUI or driving under the influence or not. So the concern I would express is the dollar weight associated with this may force that person to be uninsured. And the uninsured population is already pretty significant. There's no way to absolutely calculate that. Over the years, I've seen a number of numbers, but generally it's in the low to mid-teens of people already that drive without insurance. So that would be the concern that I would express to this committee.
Thank you. We have a question, Mr. Potter, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So those amounts are high. I would agree. So is there some amount we could come to with the senator that under your guidance that it still increases penalties? Because I do think, hey, if you've done this a few times, the penalty should go up, but not so much that they lose their insurance, but still sends a message of like, this is more serious because you're repeating violation.
Right. And Senator Parrott, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I'm not trying to find a middle ground. And you indicate the penalty. It's really the penalty is kind of in the criminal world, and Senator Harbin had indicated that person paid a penalty of going to jail. Mm-hmm. So this is sort of different. It's a penalty of higher insurance rates, right, I suppose. And I don't know what that number is, but my concern would be placement in the first place. But I don't know. Less than 100, 300, 100 would probably just logically be a little more affordable for the person that's behind the rock in the first place, but I don't know what the number is.
Finding coverage at all.
That's the issue.
What he means by placement. Finding anybody that would insure you at these limits in the current market we're in, especially. And then you mentioned,
I was just trying to see, could we get to an amount that...
Sure, I get that. You mentioned it, egregious doing this multiple times. This is a first offense situation, the way it's currently written, just to clarify. Senator Cowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Potter, I'm just wondering, are you aware of any states where perhaps the sentencing judge on the DUI case can put a provision like this on there that, in order to get your license back, you would have to show proof of coverage in these higher limits? That just might be another way to get to it, give more discretion.
It may be, and I would say sentencing judges have an awful lot of discretion about what they can do when somebody's before them. And it may be, I think as we were looking at this, Stacey Freeman found a case from way back where something like that had occurred like 60, 70 years ago. And then there's a different form. Is this the one from Virginia?
Yes.
In Virginia's got a form where it is, in order to maintain a license, it is a higher limit. So other states have looked at it that way. It's not quite addressing your question,
okay,
but I think a judge can certainly do that.
All right. Senator Robertson.
A question for the insurance folks on the committee or for Bobby, but if you have a DUI, a single DUI, and it comes up on your driving history, doesn't that already trigger higher insurance premiums normally? Because it certainly would increase the liability if this individual goes out and repeats. And I do want to point out the third, and Chairman Cowser, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the third DUI charge is a habitual violator, and that is a felony.
So, yes, your insurance, you could anticipate your insurance rates going up astronomically with a DUI, and probably, depending on the carrier you're with, you're probably going to get your insurance is going to be canceled, and you'll have to go to a non-standard type carrier to even get coverage, which non-standard carriers charge more to begin with, because you wouldn't go to a non-standard if you were a preferred driver, safe generally, unless you just have no experience or really young, or there's different reasons, but
Yes, sir. So to that point, I would just touch, clearly, if that is the demonstrated conduct, the risk is a lot higher for an insurer to insure that driver. There's other discussions going on around this Capitol about insurance and risks, but in this circumstance, the risk is clearly much higher.
Mr. Bobby, what is so you mentioned the SR22 and that it's a 3-year, and this calls for 4 years. How does that interface with the current system?
My gut reaction would be not well, that it would be one of the things that would need to be dovetailed if this was to proceed. It is 3 years over DDS and it's 4 years here. And one of under the DDS form, it would indicate prepayment, but prepayment every 6 months, because to call for a prepayment of 4 years would be almost, in the circumstances of the person, the type of people that we're talking about, would be almost unachievable or extremely difficult.
Okay.
So that would be one change to dovetail with DDS regs.
We're going to milk you for all your expertise while you're here. So the author of the bill has a quick question.
No, just in research work that we have done, we found that different states do have different limits of liability that they will require.
Yes, sir.
As far as that, so that's something that's just kind of a negotiable. I think the other issue is to realize that in 15 years we've not increased minimum limits, and one of the things that people are paying for today more than ever before is uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist. That's affecting all of us. I think that's a part that we have to be aware of. The non-standard companies are out there that will write if you have a DUI. They're going to, I always say this, they believe if they take all your money for insurance, you can't buy gas or alcohol, and therefore there would be a good risk from that standpoint.
That's the theory.
Good theory. It works as far as that portion. But I think you do have to look at a person that...
Is there a question there?
No. But what I was going to say, I can provide the other states. There are other states that do require limits to be increased across the country. We just have to look at that. But I think currently where we are, to come back to the minimum limits, which are already extremely low when you look at what we're dealing with damage-wise and all, something, in my opinion, needs to be done, because our citizens ultimately suffer the consequence of that behavior, and it needs to deal with their behavior, that they don't want to do that again.
But to the extent there was a question,
yes.
Senator Harbin there, you shifted the focus a little bit to minimum limits, which comes up certainly every few years here, and I would just respond, because that's not in this bill right now, but generally Georgia, if you look at the 50 state lineup, Georgia's pretty much in the middle. There are states that are lower, surprisingly. There are states that are higher. But if it increases, just be mindful of that, then there is a higher dollar amount associated with the risk, and there'll be a higher premium. So that's no way to lower insurance rates.
All right, we have another question. Senator Hodges.
I have a question. Maybe this might be for those of you who have insurance experience, or maybe those of you who have law enforcement experience. But if you have first-time offender and we set limits that are so high that he or she can't get insurance, I think common sense would tell me the likelihood they'd probably continue to drive without insurance. Makes the matter, which might make the matter worse. I don't know if that's a question or a comment, but
We allow both.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank
That's
you.
the concern.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And the last one we'll have is Mr. Bryce Rawson from the Insurance Commissioner's Office.
To that end, sir, I'd say that I think right now we have the same amount of hair on our chin, but I might have a little more up here.
Bryce.
But thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Bryce Rawson, Director of Legislative Affairs over at the Georgia Insurance Commissioner's Office, and I hope that I can give you guys a little bit of time back today. It seems like a lot of the points that I was going to bring up have already been spoken about. So first, but just to go through them very quickly, this bill, it does have the potential to increase the number of uninsured drivers. To your point, Senator Hodges, uninsured drivers, because driving history is already a factor. If you get a DUI, a conviction, insurance companies, you're already going to have to pay a higher rate for your coverage when you do go get it. What this is kind of the icing on the cake for this instance. So you're already paying a higher amount of coverage, but then you also have to pay the additional cost for these increased limits here on line 18 to lines 23. So that is going to be an additional cost once you do have to go purchase insurance. And it's our goal, of course, to maintain that we have both availability and affordability of insurance products in Georgia, and that kind of dings for this group that affordability aspect of that. So it does have, to your point, sir, the potential to increase the number of folks who choose or who are not able to pay for that coverage for those folks who just drive uninsured. And getting into an accident with an uninsured driver, that is it is a very lengthy process and is a very expensive process all around for every party involved. Second, I believe the spirit of this bill, the onus is on the individual. I think that is the spirit, sir, with this, that they are required to carry this coverage and report that they have this coverage. I think one thing to consider as we have further discussions on this bill is that the insurance that you purchase for your auto coverage, it does not travel with the individual, it travels with the vehicle. So, if I, have a friend who had a DUI and I allowed him to drive my vehicle, if you get into an accident in that vehicle, it is my coverage that would go into effect first. And then anything else would be supplemented secondary by the operator of the vehicle that time if they had a DUI. And then third, I believe this warrants additional conversations with some other stakeholders. We have not had time as an agency to discuss it with any other folks. So let's call it the GEECS, so the Georgia Electronic Insurance Compliance System that is run by the Department of Revenue. There may be some reporting requirements in there that we would need in there. And so I think we would need just a little bit of additional time, because right now in Georgia we do not have a way to track who has a DUI and how this would be reported. I know that we've spoken about, and Mr. Potter before me spoke about SR 22s and the other documents, but I think we want to have additional folks that we have a conversation with and just kind of bring everybody to the table. I know that we've already discussed some changes that would be in this bill, some amendments, and I think we'd like to certainly be at that table at that time when that happens and brings a couple of other stakeholders in as well. But hopefully that was very brief, and that is all my comments.
Thank you. Senator Robertson.
Yeah, just to Senator Hodges' point on the individual who gets the DUI and loses their insurance, and we all of a sudden create an individual who goes out and gets in the vehicle and drives uninsured. While I appreciate the regulatory hurdles we need to look at, I think we get on a slippery slope when we think, hey, we're going to make it tough on this person who's out there doing something endangering people. But gee, if we make it too tough, they may do this and this increases this, and I understand that completely. There's nothing we could do to correct the bad behavior of somebody that wants to go out there and do that. And if somebody goes out there and chooses to drive without auto insurance, then maybe we need to make the hammer for driving uninsured big enough to discourage that, because there is no money to get from anybody when they're out there doing that. But I'm certainly not ever going to back off what's right just because the person who gets punished may go out there and do something else wrong. But you're exactly right. It would increase the number, but maybe we need to look at that hammer too.
Okay. Good discussion. I think hopefully good feedback, Chairman, for you, and look forward to some further work on this issue. One last item of business before we adjourn. This shouldn't take more than about 45 minutes. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We've got Senate Bill 60 from Chairman Hufstetler. It relates to pharmacy benefit managers. It's resting comfortably in the committee right now, and it's a complicated bill, and I need to put it in a subcommittee, and I'm going to spring this on you guys. I'm sorry I haven't discussed it with any of you all, but I would ask Randy Robertson, Senator Robertson, to chair the subcommittee, and the members of the subcommittee will be Senator Robertson, obviously, Senator Hodges, and Senator Harbison. And that is Senate Bill 60, Pharmacy Benefit Manager Bill, Chairman Hufstetler. Okay? And with that, I hope there's no further business. Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned, and you all have a safe travels, and we'll see you, some of y'all Monday and some of y'all Tuesday. Thanks.